Hi boys and girls, I'm going to show you where you can find your 0601 math assignment called What's the Decimal Point? You're going to go ahead and click on your math course. You're going to scroll down to module 6. And at the top here, 601, what's the decimal point? We're going to click on the blank page. That's going to open up the lesson. This is a 6-page lesson. Make sure you go through all the pages, boys and girls. The pages in the lesson are going to show you examples of how to do your worksheet assignment. So please make sure you go through each of these pages, do the practice problems, look at all the different parts of the lesson so that when you do your worksheet, it's a lot easier. Okay, so the worksheet's on your last page, but of course you're going to go through all of your pages. Under what's my assignment, what's the decimal point is your worksheet. And it's a 1-page worksheet. And there's 4 questions, but some of the questions have multiple parts. So number 1 has A, B, and C. You're solving those equations. In the lesson, it's going to show you an easier way than having to do the long division out. So make sure you look at that lesson. Number 2, it says explain the pattern that you notice when dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000. And it'll go over that in the lesson, the different patterns you can use when you're dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000. And then number 3, we've got powers of 10. Okay, we did powers of 10 towards the beginning of the year, probably about a month and a half ago. So you're going to use, and we actually talked about this a little bit before, but you've got some decimals that you're multiplying by a power of 10 for A and C, and then B and D, you have whole numbers being divided by powers of 10 as well. And just remember, for B and D, even though they're whole numbers, they're still decimal points. So for example, for B, 412, well, that's a whole number, but you can put a decimal point in that number by putting a decimal point at the end. So 412 decimal point 0 is the same as just 412. And then for D, 6,132, there isn't a decimal there, but you can always put one in at the end. You could put 6,132 decimal point and 0. So that could help you with doing B and D, is if you go in and put a decimal point. And then number 4, explain the placement of the decimal point when dividing by a power of 10. So if you remember correctly, when we were multiplying by a power of 10, we moved the decimal point to the right because we were multiplying, and then we looked at the exponent to see how many times we were going to move that decimal. Well, it's the same thing here, except instead of moving the decimal point to the right, we're going to be moving it to the left because we're dividing. So throughout that lesson, I want you to be looking for, how to move that decimal point. What's that pattern? And explain that for number 4. Okay. When you're done with your worksheet, you're going to go back to your lesson. You're going to go to the next activity for 601, and you'll have a blue plus mark where you can attach your work.